Matrix, a divine paradigm of love and universal consciousness, with your host, Janet Kira Lessin and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
Together, we transform the world.
And now, here are your hosts, Janet Kira and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
Aloha. Are
Aloha.
we
Let's do this
back?
one more time. Give me just a moment and I'll get our guest on.
Okay, couldn't make out what you said, but is Ethan, are you back? Are we back? Okay.
You are live on the air at this moment, Janet. Give me just a moment. I will get Ethan back on with us. Hold on.
Okay, we are holding. Thank you. Thank you for your patience while we try to get back Ethan onto our show. Ethan is a very wonderful, creative individual. His first book was The Complete Idiot's Guide to Oligarchical Collectivism. In it, he explores history, philosophy, and activism through an Orwellian lens. His most recent work is The Geometry of Energy, How to Meditate. It presents a way for all levels of practitioners to expand their individuation and find their true nature. It contains esoteric secrets and meditation techniques, all derived from and related to the four dimensions of geometry. The Geometry of Energy presents the mathematics of meditation, some of the most simple of sacred geometrical concepts. Another book he's written is called The Matrix of Four. The philosophy of the duality of polarity is Ethan's meta-philosophy. In it, he delves into the development of individual consciousness and understanding the collective consciousness. The meta-philosophy provides insight on meditation as well as political observation through universally shared ideas, leading to the portrayal of the righteous rebel archetype, as well as the philosophy of. We're still trying to get him on. I hear a phone, but I'll go down and tell you more about his books. Down and Out in Mendocino is Ethan's first published fiction, one of the first in the genre of plot fiction.
Hello.
Hey, aloha, Ethan. Do we have you back?
Cool. Are we on right now, or?
We are live. We are live. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Where would you like to start? I think we were talking about
oligarchies, and you were basically making the point that the oligarchy moves as a collectivity without necessarily conspiring in the same conference.
No doubt. And I like to, I don't know if I'm now repeating myself, but when I conceptualize things and look at things, I like to really boil it down into its most simple. And that, I think, can allow to, or for some profound ideas. And so governments, essentially, all they do is promote and prohibit. And we see all around the world what they're promoting and what they're prohibiting. And I think just one thing that they prohibit kind of opens a window into this parallel roads towards oligarchy that we see from all these institutions. And that's that hemp and marijuana are prohibited. And so these are some of the most beneficial plants there is. Medicine, source for fuel, source for clothing, source for food, housing, you name it. Hemp and cannabis, marijuana supply all of the, things that could at least inhibit a lot of these oligarchical processes. One of the most oligarchical, institutionalized, globalized processes that would be severely impacted by hemp being illegal and the most oily plant on the planet being legal is the oil institutions. And I call it the Petrolithic era in my book, The Complete Patriot's Guide. The Petrolithic era began when Rudolf Diesel mysteriously died at sea. And actually, one of the reasons, more than likely, we still don't know how Diesel died, or really, more accurately, who killed Rudolf Diesel, the inventor of the diesel engine, is because there were so many institutions that would have liked to see him dead. and so when Diesel died, soon after, World War I broke out. And so the Petrolithic era, since Rudolf Diesel died, has been a war to procure and to use oil. And I mean, any practically illiterate so-and-so in the United States or anywhere in the world knows that oil is why the war nations go to war. And it's we can see in war history that they actually fought over it many times. And Germany arguably lost World War II because they simply ran out of oil. And so, again,
so let me elaborate and ask you some questions on what you just said there, because it's very interesting. I read a book where Tesla had retrofitted the Model T Fords in the early part of the 20th century with some kind of technology which basically drew energy from the air. But they, of course, squelched that. So you're saying they also killed Rudolf Diesel and squelched that.
Well,
so somebody was doing
I don't
this
know who killed Diesel, but what most stories suggest is that Germany was responsible in one form or another for killing Diesel, because Diesel was, at the time that he died, was on his way to England to give England technology for their submarines, i.e. diesel engines.
So if we could extrapolate and just imagine if Diesel hadn't been killed, what do you think this world would look like right now?
Well, I'll tell you what. Here's what it boils down to. The naming diesel fuel, this Petrolithic era product, diesel fuel, is not only a misnomer, but an insult to this man. Because Rudolf Diesel designed his engines to run on biofuels or whatever.
Okay.
Right? So his engines were specifically designed. His intention in designing the diesel engine was to empower localization, the very opposite of what the petrolithic industries and the governments and let's face it, the royalty has put forth onto the world with oil. The very opposite. They've globalized and institutionalized it to where the few are in control. The few mine, refine, and then allow us all to burn it and pay for it. Interestingly enough, nuclear fuel is mined, refined, and burned, and also controlled by the few. And I think, this is, I don't have proof of this, but I think it's certainly an extrapolation culturally that we can notice. Not only has the energy oligarchy or the oligarchical collectivism of the energy institutions taken control over the way we live our lives, they've taken control over the way we conceptualize energy. We don't even think that something like this Tesla coil could exist. We don't think that solar power is viable, that wind, wave, ocean current technology, all these other things are even viable because it's not mined, refined, and burned. This is the mentality that we're trained to kind of think on as far as fuel goes.
Wow.
So yeah, not only do they control the fuel, they control how we even conceptualize it. And so the Petrolithic era began when diesel died, and it is calling this petroleum-fueled diesel is an insult to him, certainly. But yeah, the most oily plant on the planet, and he had several other plants in mind, but hemp was one of the main ones that Rudolf Diesel had in mind to empower localization because it could grow anywhere. And they call it weed for that reason, not because some hippie said, hey, let's smoke some weed. No, they call it weed because it grows like weed. It is. It is a weed. It grows just that, virulent. And so there's a way, the cannabis history and understanding how the oil and energy, you can grasp how institutionalized this oligarchical collectivism is, how huge it is. I like to compare it actually to a pyramid. It's many, many blocks making this pyramid structure that is easier and easier the higher you go. Less and less pressure the higher you go in the pyramid. But on the other hand, the people and the individuals at the base of the pyramid, all we have to do is walk out, right? See the metaphor I'm going for?
Walk out.
The pyramid system is
Like
dependent on us, right?
Sasha has a question. Hold on one second.
Well, it's just that in terms of programming, so that we think of the only type of energy as being petro energy, it's obvious that cannabis allows you to dissociate from the intellectual and programmed mind and lets you get the broader picture and opens your right hemisphere. And basically, you become meditative and you see the bigger picture when you smoke pot.
Right, and I wonder what scares the oligarchs more, the fact that it would open our minds or the fact that they would lose their energy control, right?
Well, I think it's like Tim Leary said, people, when you smoke and tune in, you stop participating in institutions that depersonalize and take the warmth out of life.
That's right. And we're so layered and bogged down by programming, if you will, by this culture that says it's okay to go to war, but we have to question giving universal health care. This cultural discrepancy where we'll quickly hinder, but we really have to give a lot of thought on helping. So through this kind of initiation and programming, often we can't even explain exactly why we have the feelings that we do and why we have the notion that, I'm going to drop out, like I quote unquote brag about in my bio, right? I'm going to drop out because I started to see that your institutions are dehumanizing me and all of the people around me. And not only that, you're killing the Mother Earth. And, so yeah, there's plenty of validity in postmodern time period to actually drop out. But
how
to
can
that
you
point,
generalize that so that it's not just, Ethan dropping out, but it's the populations that support the institutions that enslave us? How do you get people to deprogram themselves and to drop out to exercise nullity of these institutions?
And thank you for asking that, and beautiful, and that's the crux, isn't it? That's what it all boils down to. And I think again, simple to profound, right? Most people think that positivity and saying yes is the most powerful format, and it truly is for the self. Saying yes, this simple declaration, is one of the most powerful statements. However, when we're in a situation that we're in now where they're putting forth war on outside nations. And let's face it, the police state is one of the most rapidly expanding operations in our country. And we're going to war on individuals. And so one of the most powerful sentiments a dropout makes initially on his dropping out, or they're dropping out, is no. No. And so if we can summon the power to say no, it is a complete deflation. I like to look at it as a spiritual and political correlation, that aren't declarations in spiritual practices the most powerful affirmations, the most powerful thought processes or concentrations. And same thing in politics. A declaration is the most powerful thing. And when enough people come together and say no, or yes, because really, like with yin and yang, they're really just kind of the same energy, right? They can be essentially the same energy. When enough people get together and in a positive manner say no to the institutions that are kind of, as Orwell put forth in his allegory, putting a boot on the human face forever, when enough people say no, you see the pyramid fall. You see the chips fall.
Right now, the general population of the United States does not want our troops fighting in the Middle East anymore, and the damn government keeps sending them anyhow. And we have a so-called volunteer army that isn't really volunteer, because it's just poor people being coerced into a less dangerous job than walking in their ghettos. And how do you ever get to the place where there's enough people that are saying no, and there's a general strike against government so it ceases to exist as it does as an oligarchy?
Well, I think the problem is the subconscious doesn't recognize the word no. So we need to put it into an affirmation, a yes towards something rather than a no. That's what I'm getting as you're saying it. But go ahead, Ethan. You tell us.
You're both. You're both right, and I think the poverty draft is the dynamic that really is keeping the World War going, and also this impetus, this demand that we be proud of war. Well, look at our holidays. Every other holiday, Memorial Day, Independence Day, Thanksgiving is even now turning into this theme where we have to be proud of our troops. Well, you know what? I'm certainly proud of our troops, but I'm sorry for them too. And we have to stop memorializing war and celebrating war and allowing these guys to put forth the idea that it's somehow heroic to really kill and die for oligarchs. So I think it's a trick in, yes, getting forth the dynamic across that no is empowering, no is positive, can be positive, but also to eliminate the poverty draft and this blind pride, because this grand kind of look at terrorism right now. Terrorism is a violence to get forth a political statement. It doesn't matter how crazy the political statement is. Mostly political statements are, in fact, crazy, whether they're coming from a person or a government. And so terrorism is certainly done by people in uniforms and otherwise. And so violence for political statement, it's all terror. It's all terror. And so getting forth this information that they're only fueling the fire, these kids that don't know any bit of anything and are, brought into the idea that it is a viable option, whether by way of their some kind of pride or, like you pointed out, poverty draft. And literally, I grew up in New York City, and I know what it's like to be in the hood. And it is, you're not afraid when you're in a foreign country after you grow up in the United States inner city. Definitely.
Wow.
And we are some of the most violent people there is, and we're not thinking. It is basically what it comes down to. We're not using our heads. And I mean, we could keep digging at this whole why, how, but it's really a training program. We see, the kids see the cops are violent, and the kids see that our systems are violent, and they're violent. I mean, we're live by the gun, die by the gun. Look at these guys in Oregon. They're showing the way you get respect from the government and police is by having a gun. This is not
Janet Reno's successors are going to move in on him after a while. Anyhow, it's like the state has
truly they are.
what they
Truly they are. We can't fight these guys with guns. And Gandhi really illustrates this power of no, right? Very clearly. When he was attacked, he refused to press charges in the English courts, right? And so this is a bold and heroic refusal, a bold and heroic no, certainly, right? And so if enough people come together peacefully and say no, things do, I think, change. And whether it's directly or dynamically, right? Like a lot of the things that happened in the civil rights era did happen directly. Other things happened dynamically, right? Kind of were after effects by this change in a stream of thinking, right?
Like, give us an example. What were some of the after effects?
Well, the after effects of voting is we have a black president, for one thing.
Well, that was 40,
there you go.
50 years later. What about
also just more gender equality, all these things, it kind of is an after effect, and many things I don't know because they're just subtle kind of notions. But the idea is, back to where we started. When they removed lead from gasoline, they realized that they had been poisoning the entire population with lead in the gasoline. You know how they concluded this was that violence decreased and crime decreased. And so literally the leaded gas in North America was causing people brain damage to the point that they tended to be more violent, tended to go forth and commit violent criminal acts, right? And
wow.
They didn't know this was happening until they removed the lead from the gasoline. Then this dynamic, why is violence decreasing? Why is crime decreasing? Markedly, right? And so,
wow, that would also account for why the Romans were so violent, because their lead pipes that they conveyed their water to themselves were poisoning them too and making them prone to violence.
Absolutely, and all these, I think, these really deep, dark individuals know this. They know it. And, interesting enough, also, one of the main or immediate, I should say, resulting pollutants from a lot of radioactive waste is a lead byproduct that goes right into the water.
Oh.
And look what, back to the water, look what happened. Here's another protest where there was direct and then dynamics. The Boston Tea Party, direct results, right, but then all kinds of dynamics, right? I mean, look at history, right? All kinds of dynamics after that. And you know what they were fighting over was so that they could have fair access to tea. Well, tell that to the people of Flint, Michigan right now, right? The institutions of Flint, Michigan poisoned the whole city to save some money with lead. Lead poison, they allowed this. Are you familiar with this story?
Vaguely, but tell our listeners, please.
So it's turning out, I think they're still scratching the surface, but it's turning out, of course, the mayor knew and the governor knew that they were supplying Flint, this historical American city, with water from a polluted, long-time bereft waterway. And so a generation of kids, they're saying, is permanently lead poisoned. And not to mention a bunch of people, too, but a generation of children eliminated. They had clean access to water. It was removed from them, and they were poisoned. And so take that and contrast that with the Boston Tea Party, where they were fighting or protesting, rather, over fair access to tea. They had clean water, and now we don't even have clean water for the tea. And I think that
even when you bring a government down by a boycott or general strike or something like that, what you often get is worse than or just as bad as what you had before. The French Revolution ends with this Napoleon who kills most of the people in Europe. You know, it's like you've got to somehow do more than just bring down the old institutions.
This is what George Orwell put forth in 1984, of course, being an avid observer of history like yourself. He knew and he saw that every time there was actually a violent overthrow, that there was even worse, right? And he put it in this three-pronged kind of approach. He proposed there was the pros, or just all the schmucks who don't care really one way or another. And this is the way it was in the Boston Tea Party too. Most people were concerned about milking their cows. They didn't care about it. And so there was the proles, and then there's the inner party, and there's the outer party that are above the proles, and they're the ones that are basically soon to take over the inner party. And this kind of goes back and forth, cycling. And you know what Bob Marley said? You'll never have I'm paraphrasing, you'll never have a successful revolution unless you have a peaceful revolution. You'll just
All right. That's a good place to stop. Be back in 3 minutes after this commercial break.
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Tuesdays at 12 noon Eastern on Studio A to hear Tammy Adams share her knowledge of an unknown realm on Talking with Your Angels. Join Tammy as she uncovers hidden secrets about the spiritual world of angels, ghosts, and other entities that have been with us longer than we know. Tammy is a psychic, a teacher, spiritual coach, a leader in her field, and will be sharing her information and stories with you. So join us on Tuesdays at noon on Studio A. With Tammy's guidance, you'll find out who has been watching over you from the other side, and soon you will be talking with your angels.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hey there.
Check in. We're here.
We're here. Let us know when we go back.
We're back live. You're back.
Okay. We are live. Okay, thank you very much. Sorry for our technical difficulties today. Aloha and welcome back to the Sacred Matrix on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com with your host, Janet Kerr Lessin and Dr. Sasha Lessin. And today we are interviewing Ethan-indigo-Smith. But before we get back to our show, I'd like to remind everybody to please go over to that donation button on freedomslips.com and donate whatever you can. $1, $5, $15, $20, $100, whatever you can donate is greatly appreciated. And we do thank you very much for your donation, because your donation allows Revolution Radio to bring you shows like ours and the other wonderful hosts that have shows on Studio A and B. So thank you for your donation. And Dr. Lessin, what would you like to say before we bring back Ethan?
Just that we have to understand that the oligarchy is controlling by power, not by authority. That is, the policy they set has not been authorized as right and accepted by the general population. Once the population knows what's really going down, and Ethan is helping us understand what's really going down and what we can step out of by our conscious choice and our collective action.
And Ethan, I want to mention Orwell's 1984, because a lot of this information started with the exploration of this wonderful book. When I was a child growing up I was born in 54, so I went to school in the 50s and 60s, graduated in 72. George Orwell's 1984 was required reading. 84 for us was in the future. And to me, looking back at it, Orwell's 1984, they talk about three countries, city-states or giant continents merged together in three separate entities are constantly at war to keep the planet under major control, manipulation by the power elite. But to me, that seems to be not necessarily countries, it's religion. Religion is a factor. There are the three major religions. There's many, many religions, but the Muslims, Christian, and Jewish faith. And so that's my analogy. But back to you, and I'm looking forward to the second half of our show. Welcome back, Ethan.
I love that. I love that analogy, Janet, because I was recently thinking on that very same idea. And it's almost even, it's not countries, it's not even religions too. It's the big three religions, they're monotheistic religions, right? And so beyond that, it's almost not even religious. It's hardly spiritual. It's this religious state God thing, but it's what is really going on is driving people in a monothematic course. And so in 1984, as you suggest, there's Oceania, there's East Asia, and Eurasia. And then there's Africa, which is just the borderlands, as Orwell puts it. But these three states are constantly at war and constantly at war with different oppositions unfolding. And yes, certainly we see that with Islam, with Judaism, and with Christianity. But not to discount any spiritual lessons in these religions. It is the monotheism that is, I think, as you suggest, I think accurately, that Orwell is putting forth, right?
I'd say the Chinese, in essence, have a religion of state with the emperor as the intermediary with God, and so you can really look at a state religion as a deification of those on top, apotheosis of the leaders.
Absolutely, and communist Russia had the state god too, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So God, yeah, sure, but no, God was the guy, the inner party,
Mm-hmm.
the inner party, and Big Brother is God in this in 1984 allegory, right? And really, we all a lot of people have a lot of really silly issues with Big Brother, this wise guy with a beard, right? So we tend to worship these or allow these people to tell us what to worship. And so, this trifecta of monothematic goals leads to, well, the mess we're in. Look at the world, and you see. I mean, it is building. Obviously, right now we're seeing it build in reference to all the monothematic ideas. The religious Christian. There's Christian Zionists that are that are building the Jewish Zionists that are battling all of the jihadi and building all of the jihadi. It's a horrible dynamic where each one of them thinks that they're the best. And in talking to children recently, you know what a young ignorant child says all the time when you try to tell them something? I know. They don't know half of a thing. And you know what they say all the time? I know. This is the same thing that monotheists say. I know. They know. Their book has every answer, but yet they cannot even get along with their brothers. So what good is the books? What good are these books? So it's interesting that not only kids but monotheists all know. They know it. They know.
But the device of having corporate offices or institutions that go on through time is really allows the government itself, particularly in the United States, not to take responsibility because everything's delegated to corporations, which are beyond the law. And their private property includes the things that we need to have a decent life.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, a lot of things as far as institutions go in the world hasn't changed that much in the last 200 years. They've merely found different ways to do it, different labels for it. Back in the time of the Boston Tea Party, we had the divine right of kings, right? And the British East India Company and the Queen's men were given different rights, but certainly the royalty they could do whatever they want. Now we have divine right of corporations. Corporations can do whatever they want. They're above these state laws. They're nationless. They don't have to answer to anyone. And so the divine right of kings has been passed to the divine right of corporations. And what do we, again, it all comes back to that crux. What do we do about this? Well, if you look everywhere in our culture, it seems like, if you're paranoid like me, that everywhere you look, they're trying to degrade individuation. They're trying to get you drunk, smoke cigarettes, and keep you thinking about Kardashians, right?
Right.
And so if you want to really empower yourself, if you want to change the world, change yourself. And so this idea to stay away from alcohol is maybe coming up in the forefront of my mind, but there's a lot of other things that we can say no to. I like to look at sometimes what the really adept politicians say and I'll do the opposite, or I'll interpret the opposite. And in fact, this is what usually turns out to be the truth. 2 years ago, they'll say, well, we're not going to ever go to war with Syria. And then they're going to war with Syria. Actually, and there's a good example of opposition friends and opposition. Who are we fighting? What side is which over there? And also, Syria used to be one of the United States' major allies in the Middle East. And so these shifting sides, this Orwell knew better than anyone this fact. And he gets this double crossing idea and the flipping of the sides from this. The English Jack is called the double cross, and so the indigenous peoples of the world would see that double cross coming, and they knew what was coming, the double cross.
Right.
That's where the expression double crossed comes from. And so they literally would roll in, tell you one thing, and then slit your throat. And you'd be your XYZ would be wondering what happened. You know, this is how they did it.
They say that the American Indians, my friends tell me that every treaty the United States ever made with the indigenous people has been broken by the United States.
I think
it's interesting. The presumed, it's what makes these institutions and corporations, soul-like offices seem divine is that they have the presumption of perpetuity. And even though the people that occupy the position or the institution come and go, the institution goes on forever. That's why it seems like it's divine, but it ain't. It's just an instrument of control.
And psychologically speaking, I think that's why people are they don't know this, they won't admit it, but I think people that have the motivation to fight and die, they think that they'll become part of this immortal institution, you know?
Right.
And Buddhists or anyone that studied Buddhism knows better, right? Impermanence, nothing lasts. And we see this going on right now with all the nuclear power plants in the world. I wanted to mention to everyone, we're coming up on the 5th anniversary of Fukushima this 3/11. And
wow, 5 years.
I want to implore and inspire people to do a worldwide protest to raise awareness about Fukushima specifically and nuclear experimentation in general. I wrote an article recently, a million-year waste cycle, how to stop nuclear experimentation in your state. And there's something called a memorial law in the United States that anyone can put forth to their House of Representatives. You have to have 1 or 2 representatives back your memorial law, but it can be so much as we're going to, in memorandum of World War II, shut down all nuclear power plants. Something to the effect. It could be anything. Okay, but I also want to point out this 3/11 for everyone to wear green or black and yellow. Right, black and yellow for the radiation sign, or green for what we could be. And for a 5-year protest. I guess that's a little sideline right now, but I just wanted to mention that. Heads up.
Well, that is something. It's as simple as that. We could all, let's choose it. Do we wear green or black and yellow? If we all did this, or as many people as possible did this, it would be people going, why is everybody wearing black and yellow today? And that would start opening awareness.
Or we could start by arresting the people that are keeping the nuclear tragedy going in Fukushima, and not allowing Kishi and others that have the technology to clean it up to do anything.
Yeah, there are many technological fixes for Fukushima, and yet they're being thwarted. All these efforts are being thwarted, and apparently the Pacific Ocean is dying. Our food sources are going to be null, and that's probably part of the whole scheme of starting the Orwellian war system, World War III, which may be based on people starving and not having any place to live anymore because they're dying and the environment's being eaten up.
And we're so focused on getting new products made by slaves to oligarchs that we don't even know how to grow food. And we don't hardly care about clean water. You know, we'll be in the most beautiful aesthetics, in the most beautiful place, and the food will be top notch, but is the water clean? Does it even concern people? And so really we have to come back to the fundamentals, and I think we're totally steered to easily attack and will stress out on helping and assisting each other. And so there's another dynamic that can literally shift the whole well, in your case, the whole island, right?
Right.
And I halfway jest, but no, one act, it cascades, it perpetuates, it unfolds, and negativity.
Yeah, is a good example because we've been fighting GMO and we got that passed.
There you
I don't
go.
know what happened.
That's
Monsanto,
right.
and also we've been fighting cane burning because this cane, they burn the sugar cane, and there's pipes that are plastic and it goes in the air, and we've all lost friends that have died. Just like last week, after 50 years of protest, they are eliminating sugarcane processing on the island of Maui.
Bravo.
And switching. So it works. This
Bravo.
activism does
It works.
work,
It
even
works.
though
Exactly.
they take
And again, there's a great example of, gosh, it took that long, right? But
50 years.
it happened, and so it was something that enough people, they had to learn about. They had to realize it, and once they understand that the people that are giving them the information are concerned about their well-being, like with nukes and like with the degradation of our environment on all these fronts, once they realize, oh yeah, I am part of the environment, you're right, and it becomes inarguable. There's really, especially with nuclear experimentation, there's no side. You're either ignorant of it or you're against it. Or, people make money off of it, but they're really, perpetuating the ignorance. Excuse me, go ahead.
I think part of the whole deal is, if you're going to eliminate these, is to provide some kind of training and retraining for the people that have been employed killing people and making munitions and poisoning the environment. And so if these poor people will be thrown out of jobs, let's find them some other job.
Well, and the United States became the leader of the world and actually the most rich country in the world through agriculture, not war. Mm-hmm. We're actually becoming poor, and we're falling apart, being this war culture, which we have been since World War II. But before that, we were focused on agriculture. This is what, to be cliched, this is what made America great, is agriculture. And now we've put forth the idea that agriculture is for little people. It's, someone thinks they're too good for that, right? They do other things. So we've got to change that mindset. There's nothing more valuable feeling and fulfilling than growing your own food and working with Mother Earth, not harming her, but building her,
Yeah. I think that part of this is that the world is addicted to hierarchies, that some people are higher or have more authority than others because of ascribed criteria or even achieved criteria. But the reality is that everybody has their light to shine, and people are just not used to shining.
Yeah, right. And when we're not used to shining, we don't realize that we're our best leader. So we go, well, where is my leader? Outside. Just like we tend to be trained to look for everything outside ourselves, we don't realize, like, a vitamin D, maybe this is a extrapolation a little far, but we don't obtain vitamin D from the sun. We produce it inside of ourselves because of a reaction to the sun, right? And so it's all within us. We just have to be stimulated and be proactive in the right way. And so we keep on looking outside of ourselves for even healing. And no, they can't even experiment with pills or with any of their concoctions without having a placebo, because the mind is so powerful. It would just heal ourselves with a little flick. Yeah, all you need is a little change, right? Or all you need is a little sunlight, and you'll produce vitamin D. There you go. So as I was driving across the country promoting my books, I'll tell you, no one wants to hear about oligarchical collectivism. But they do
reach people if you're.
Well,
so
they
I didn't
do.
Know where you.
They do want to hear about the meditation ideas. The book actually that I spoke about the most on the road was 108 Steps to Be in the Zone, which is on sale as an ebook right now for 99 cents, FYI. But at the same time, as much as people didn't want to talk about politics, I found people were pretty adept. And even your cliched ardent left-wing and right-wing opposition, they both know that the government is corrupt. They both know that the system is broken. And so I think part of the thing that we have to work on is finding where we can unite politically, right? Because here's another example I think that is good in that direction. The argument of global warming has been kind of in the rest of the world, no one even argues over it, right? The United States is the only country to argue over global warming, everybody. And the only people to deny global warming now in the world are the ardent conservatives in the United States. From what I understand, the rest of the world is pretty convinced that, yes, global warming is occurring. One thing that's undeniable, even to the ardent right-wingers, is the fact that we're destroying the environment, the fact that we're polluting our water. This is something there's no debate. And so focus on that. Focus on clean water everyone needs. Focus on eliminating nuclear power plants that threaten every biological being. All these things that we can unite on rather than have them divide us over.
One of the most inspiring things was a movie called Amazing Grace and Magic Johnson or something like that, where they got all the athletes to say, we ain't going to play your games until you stop aiming the nukes at Russia. And if the Russian athletes, maybe that there's some way of creating the selective boycotts to really bring about some of the changes you're talking about.
Yeah, and I think if enough people, well, look what happened with Monsanto. Look at what is happening with Monsanto. Like you said, now there's no more GMO pineapples on the islands. Is that correct?
Right. Well,
no, the courts overthrew our law, actually.
Oh, they did, but we did win. The Monsanto spent like three to five times as much as we could.
Right.
And we won the So what
They
happened?
passed the bill, and then the court said that the county didn't have the authority, that it was state vested authority.
Oh, geez. So there's always something, but at least symbolically we.
And it's a dynamic change, right? It's all of a sudden an understanding that, wait a second, 2 years ago these same people that had the law changed and the representatives, they were, what is a GMO? Who? What? They didn't even know what it is. And now it just came out the other day, Campbell's Soup is voluntarily going to label all the GMO ingredients they have in their soup, or what isn't, right? And so again, it's a dynamic shift. All of a sudden, they're seeing all these people around the world protesting Monsanto. No one wants to. Maybe their sales didn't plunge. Their sales might not have shifted at all, but maybe they have now, upwards, right? Now that they said, you know what, actually, we feed individuals and individuals want this labeled, we'll do that. But will we ever
get the truth from them? I mean, realistically, if you think about it, they don't have to tell the truth. They can do just like they did with we won the vote, but they just overturn it by their own whatever they do. But they won't really label things. Our food is crap.
Grow your own.
Yeah, and then now they're making that.
Well, no, I agree. It is only a statement and partially hollow at best. But it's at least like, it's a trend. It's something, that points out that even though they're spending all this money on marketing their BS, it's not working. And Monsanto, from what I understand, even though they have all this money, even though they're a chemical weapons company for the United States government, they just laid off 1,000 employees last month.
Good. Well, let's cover some of your basic items here, so we get we only have like a half an hour, and the last 10 minutes or so, I'd like to focus on solutions. But I want to go through some of your items so we get some vocabulary for our listeners. According to your concepts here, what is patriotism, revolution, the power of free speech, free?
To me, patriotism is defined by the First Amendment, the 5 freedoms of the First Amendment. But if you look at the specific definition, it says one who loves country. It doesn't say anything about armament. It doesn't say anything about loyalty to government or government whatsoever. So looking at patriotism, you got to look at the words involved in defining it. So love is there and country is there. Now, what is country? It's land, locals, and liberty in the United States. Again, it's still not government. It's the land, the elements. Of course, we're on this physical plane. It's the locals. It's the people around you. It's the individuals that are among the elements, and it's liberty. This is what everyone in the world is born with the right to, and this is what governments make the excuse for their existence to hold on to. Liberty. And so a patriot is one who loves locals, land, and liberty. A patriot does not necessarily have a gun and is certainly not an enlisted person. They may be, but it's not the definition. And oligarchical collectivism we went over. I think a patriot contrasts and is what is the oligarchy fears the most, right? Is the patriots uniting in love for country, right? So the First Amendment empowers individuals. The Citizens United decision lent the First Amendment, which all of the 10 amendments, if not every one of the amendments, are focused on individual rights. not anything to do with institutions. But the Supreme Court lent the First Amendment idea that they could donate however much they wanted to political campaigns through the First Amendment. This is not, an accurate interpretation of the First Amendment, and is, again, part of the trend, part of the way that they get us to where we are today is trends. And so
it's that same thing of you choosing a corporation and treating it as though it's an individual when it's not at all, because it's presumed perpetual.
This is, I think, a big problem that we have today, culturally, collectively. I meet so many people who do not differentiate institutions and individuals. This is hugely important. We cannot give the rights of living mortals to institutions any longer. We can't do that. And not only that, we cannot allow individuals to behave like their institutions, to let them get away with murder, as the expression goes, and literally. If you look at Shell Oil Corporation, what's coming out, they knew they were polluting the world beyond repair. These oligarchies are pretty in tune with the destruction that they're causing, and that's why they're so refined in controlling the information. Because if the information is out there, then we would come together and unite. Right now in Los Angeles, the Petrolithic era is spewing over the biggest city in the world. There is a gas methane leak in a suburb of Los Angeles that is going to be end up being one of the biggest lawsuits in recent history, and class action and otherwise. So
I want to look at what you said. I want to back up. You said that the Shell Oil Corporation knew they were polluting the world beyond.
I believe it was Shell, and I believe they're being investigated right now for documenting, withholding information, acting.
So,
and this is
people? Are they human? Are they reptilian? I mean, what is going on that someone want to pollute the world, destroy it beyond redemption? I mean, they're humans, aren't they, or are they not? Maybe they're not.
Maybe they're not. I don't know, but they're certainly inhumane. I just don't know. And actually, I think the nuclear experiment is even more horrific than the Petrolithic era in total. And we've talked about this before. In researching the history of nuclear experimentation, and you eventually get to that very question. You start to ask, my God, are they planning to evacuate to some? Do they have a little Mars oasis that they're planning on going to? Are they even human? And it's certainly a valid question when they act so inhuman, when all they want to do is destroy the very environment that the human is integrated in, and that everything around every other being has been thriving for X years, X millennia, and now you're going to come in and vanquish the entirety. It certainly is not a normal behavior. Or indigenous behavior.
Humanity's like that guy Bat Guana, who's writing the from Dr. Strangelove, who's writing the nuclear bomb down and going whoopee.
Yeah, we are rapidly turning into that, and it's amazing. Recent tensions igniting through the Syria thing, seeing the how people talk about Russia now, and people talk about nuclear war really casually, and I don't think they have any idea of nuclear war. and the Russians and the Americans actually, I mean, they know, the leaders, they know, I don't think nuclear war will happen, but it's called mutually assured destruction. This is the policy that these two nuclear nations have been operating on for the last 50 years since Russia has had the bomb. It would mean mutually assured destruction. And so they cannot do it. And so my proposal, let's get rid of the mutually assured destruction, this era of mutually assured destruction, and bring about mutually agreed peace. This is, I think, where we all need to go. And so whoever is trying to instigate war, whoever is trying to fight for some sky god, these are the them. Everyone else is an us. All these countries fighting in Syria, they're all on the same side. They're on the side of war. They're on the side of killing. We should differentiate the system in this way. There's no Russia in the United States. There's people who are going to war, and the rest of us, brothers, refuse their war world, that refuse their oligarchy and their inhumane stuff that they might as well, if they're not, they might as well be reptilian. The allegory fits perfectly. If they're not, they might as well be. Right. They're that cruel. They're that shifty.
So let's talk about that. How do we effectively concretize and begin the actions of saying no and refusing? What are some examples?
Well, you could lay down your arms and return to your bases and demand passage home. You could start with unilateral giftings and acts of love and touch off a cascade of good exchanges.
Yeah,
beautiful. Well, let's look at that. 1 second before we go past that. You were an activist during the Vietnam War. So maybe tell our listeners a little bit what happened. How did that war end? About this laying down the arms.
Okay, it wasn't just us people protesting here. It was the GIs themselves that put FTA all over. You know what that means? It means F the Army. And they would, and when their officers would say, "Take that hill, man, and we'll have to give it back tonight," they'd roll a grenade at the officer that was trying to get all these guys killed. It's when the soldiers in Nam said, "We ain't going to die for no medals for our lieutenants," that the war ended.
Right on. That's powerful words. And you know what was going on in Vietnam and Korea? While our boys were fighting their boys, the oil companies were selling to both sides. Be sure. Don't get it twisted. And they were also, the officers were also ordering our boys, their dogs, right? They call them dog tags for a reason, folks. This is what they think of these people. They would have them not fire at oil cargo going to the enemy. It's money, man.
Oh my God.
It's money. And so this is there's a perfect window into the superseding of individuals that these oil companies especially rigidly and especially insidiously, they supersede, so much so that we're seeing different situation with ISIS right now. They're actually bombing the oil tankers, but this is a different situation. But in Vietnam, they literally were like, let them go through, and Korea, excuse me. So these oil companies supersede even the war that's going on, and maybe even postulating those were all pirated oil trucks, right? And so what does that say? But I mean, obviously the oil was going to Israel and the United States from what they said through Turkey. So Yeah, it's the system is corrupt. It's gamed on you since the very beginning. The song "We Didn't Start the Fire," it was always burning.
Oh, yeah.
It was. You came into this place and they already had a fire burning, and that fire is supplying a bunch of shadows to all these people that make them believe these false images. And your job as a human being, so to speak, is to break through. Right? This is what we have to do essentially. And I just saw a great little clip of this guy in the Vietnam era talking, and he was talking about the revolution will not be televised. People tend to think of that now as meaning something literal. What it meant back in the day and what it still means today, what it implies today is true. It meant the revolution's not going to be televised, man, because it's going to be inside your head. You're not going to see it on TV. You're going to see it inside you, right? And so the revolution is a revolution of consciousness. This is where we need to be. All of these systems will literally fall apart. Imagine as if that pressured layer of a pyramid says, just like you alluded to with the Vietnam boys saying, nah, no more. When they walk out, the pyramid structure, the status quo, the oligarchical collectivism falls apart. And we don't need guns.
Right.
In fact, it won't work well with them. Sorry.
I just think that there's also what happens to the individual soldier, and now that could even be a woman from the United States. I've worked with a lot of people that had near-death experiences, and every bit of pain that they have inflicted on another person when they die before they come back, they feel that, not just of the guy they killed, but of the people that suffer because of it. You think of All Quiet on the Front, where you see a German and a French soldier just realizing, my God, we're just two people with loving people with families. Why are we killing each other? So you realize that it's time for the soldiers to stop killing.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the quiet revolution. It goes inside the mind. We've got another 10 to 15 minutes. And I would like to focus on I call it solutions. So tell us a little bit more about what is revolution and this quiet revolution within our minds, and it's not going to be televised.
Well, I think it's a matter of observing the self. If you can observe your behavior, you can supersede it. And you can start to see and better why you're doing something that you're doing. So meditation, I find, is a way to have breakthroughs. You'll see a lot of people do all they can to not be alone, to not have a quiet moment, to always be listening to music, always be watching TV, always be drunk, always be active, maybe they're totally sober all the time. Always active, always doing. Never giving themselves an opportunity to have some quiet time and have a realization, have a breakthrough. And breakthroughs allow you to grow. Otherwise, we all are like knights and we in England or something, and we'll just be in our shells, get completely closed off, completely protected from everybody else. Right? And so to break through, you have to open up, and when I was traveling across the country, I had a bunch of breakthroughs because I was by myself a lot of the times. And when you're by yourself, you face the ego, you face the shadows. And I had this moment where I realized meditation could be perceived in a mathematical way. With my book, The Geometry of Energy, I interpreted or put forth a way to meditate using the 4 dimensions of geometry, points, lines, circles and spheres, or in a meditative geometric measurement, concentration, right? That point of focus is concentration. Line is connection. So concentration, connection, and then the circle is circulation, right? A lot of meditations are about circulating energy. And then the final one is unity expansion. And so when you start, the more you meditate, the more you realize this is your planet. This is Planet Janet, right?
Yes, Janet Planet, yes.
It is. And everyone is you. You are everyone. We are all here at the same time, and we're all temporary. That makes us really, really closely related, right? Mm-hmm. And there's all kinds of dynamics you could express this unity expansion, this oneness. We're all connected. And the more you realize that we're all connected, the less you'll ever follow the orders of an oligarchy telling you to dispose of XYZ, right?
Right. Yeah, you have to get to that point of oneness and the realization that you are everything and everything is you. And that's hard to convey to people, and yet I see so many people that are having these spiritual awakenings and spiritual emergencies, and they're getting the great giant aha. And I'm wondering if that's something that's happening, I don't know, spontaneously, or maybe where we are in the continuum, or what do you think is going on here?
Well, I think it happens all the time, but people only go to the point of break. They don't go to the breakthrough, right? Uh-huh. And so a lot of times, actually, specifically, near-death experiences, great trauma brings about, oh my God, the epiphany, oh my gosh, I am everyone is me, and I've been doing it wrong, or I've been doing it in a way I could better now, right? So I think it does come back to this one guru, a story about a guru saying he meets a man, and the man is another wise person, and this wise person, every time he meets someone, he wishes that they'll have a severe illness. And so not that they would suffer. No, so that they would have an epiphany, so that they would have a moment of breakthrough and come out of it more largesse, more unity expansion, more connected. Right. And so it's a joke, right, to wish something bad upon someone, but it's the catalyst often enough for progress, for some kind of resolution, and then shed the past and then move forward. So I think, a lot of people only get to the point of break, and then they'll retreat back into their armor and then not continue to the breakthrough.
But to break through, what would you suggest they do so many of us realize we get to the point of break and it gets frustrating. Okay, they retract, like you said. What would you recommend? What would you suggest to our listeners to break through?
I think it was MacArthur who said, when you're going through hell, keep going. So I don't know the specifics, and I think it's very determined by the specifics, but the point is to keep going. There's always more self to understand, more self to surpass. Carl Jung said, the moment we are conscious, we immediately lose it the next moment.
Yeah.
So the point is to always try to be the observer, always try to be conscious of your thinking and being. This be resolute in that, and you will the breakthroughs will be a lot easier. Actually, there won't be so much of a break, because the break happens when the universe says, you know what, you haven't been listening, so meet 2x4. The universe is going to drop the lesson on you. You made a soul contract to learn the lesson, or it is your destiny, or what have you. But the universe will introduce you to the 2x4 of the lesson if you're not paying attention. Discipline is not something that you have to ardently pursue every day, be hard every day. Discipline is just doing the right thing at the right time. That's it. Just
it's interesting if you think of the world as a resonant field, that everything that resonates within us. Then what we've got to do is look at the oligarch within ourselves, our own part of ourself, that the intellect or the ego that tends to repress the expression of other parts. And you can do the same thing on the micro level of yourself, and perhaps you're changing the whole world by resonance.
No, that's a beautiful thought, and everything is the micro and the macro. What we do inside is reflected on the outside, and to that point, the oligarchy on the outside feeds the oligarchy within, also, right? And so, the more we disperse the ego, the more we disperse the false authority outside as well. It's totally a mirror, totally a mirror, huh? So both are done in conjunction, in unison, just like Gandhi pointed out. If you want to change the world, change yourself. So
right. So what is individualization?
Well,
or individuation, I think you're saying.
Individuation, I think, is becoming your true nature. Your true nature is not my true nature, right? There's certainly parallels, but I think it is part of individuation at this stage of the game is shedding the constraints, shedding the reactions that have been placed on us. We're so trained, we'll often have the same exact reaction to things, right?
Right.
And so there's an example of something we can observe. Our reactions to things. Change your reactions to responses, and then they're all of a sudden conscious. If you are making a response, it's not an unconscious reaction. So an example I like to give, it just happened to me the other day. I saw that a child left trash on the floor. A reaction would have been, hey, what the blah, blah, blah. Hey, kid. A response could be picking it up and saying, look, I just picked this up. You left this here. And putting it in the trash. As simple as that. Same thing with any trash that you see at your feet. Do you react or do you respond? And the world, those people that started the fire millennia ago have left a whole lot of trash. So we can choose to just be in a reactionary mode, bouncing like a pinball machine in react, or respond. And individuation is many things. It is developing confidence, developing stature, developing the means really to say yes and no according to viable morality, not legality, not the false authority. So individuation is many things, many different things for many different people. But certainly if there's a large number of people that are in their power of their individual self, there's no need for an institution.
Oh.
Right? It's not even on the radar. It doesn't fit a requirement schematic. They're all institutions unto themselves. Of course, they need other people. We all do. We all need other people. By nature, there's something individuation doesn't surpass. It actually unfolds, right? We need other people. We don't need government. We don't need corporations. We may need resources that corporations have, but we don't need corporations. No. These institutions are total facades, and the more you individuate, the more you realize self and surroundings.
And I'd say that offices are institutions too. That is because they go on, even though the people that are there change. And so what it really comes down to is people who have become realized, the charismatic people that start things. Weber calls it the institutionalization of charisma, trying to change the actual power that person has because people think they're right and they agree into rules that oppress people and limit their freedom. You can't regularize charisma.
They've taken it and spun it into a system of bars. They've put us into a system of, for all extents and purposes, prison. Yeah.
Right. We're in a prison planet. We have about 2 minutes. What's your latest book? What's it about?
Well, my latest work is The Geometry of Energy, and I was in Sedona, Arizona, and it came to me in a discussion, and I relate. It's the mathematics of meditation, relating many different meditation practices and traditions and philosophical ideas to the 4 dimensions of geometry, that is points, lines, circles, and spheres. And I think it's quite profound, and I think in a mathematical approach, although it's not too heady mathematical, it's more meditative stance, one can actually practice individuation by pursuing it in one's own format specifically, but through the construct of the 4 dimensions.
And how do people reach you?
I'm pretty easy to reach, Facebook, etc. I'm all over there.
You have books for sale. You have an author page on Amazon?
My books are on Amazon, and my author page is on your site.
Well, thank you very much, and on the show, and thank you, love, things and
one love. Thanks, you guys.
Yes.
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Who owns you? If you're not in control, then someone else is. Join me, Ivy West, for Voices on the Wind, Saturday from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern in Studio A. I discuss government, health, metaphysics, suppressed science, universal mysteries, little-known incredible facts, alternative energies, and even more than you can imagine. Won't you join us on Revolution Radio Saturdays from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern for Voices on the Wind with me, Ivy West.
There are lives in the balance, people under fire, children at the cannons.
Because if your head's in the sand, your tail is a target.